Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship, looking down at the planet below. The world looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Blue and silver lights danced across its surface like frozen lightning. This was Zephyria Prime, home to one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. Jake had been a space captain for 15 years. He had met many different alien species during that time. Some were friendly, others were strange, and a few had tried to kill him. But none had been as important as the Zephyrians. These aliens controlled a huge part of the galaxy. They had technology that humans could only dream about. The human government had worked for 3 years to arrange this meeting. Earth wanted to join the galactic community. They needed allies and trading partners. The Zephyrians were their best chance at both. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the planet," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was Jake's second in command and had been with him on 12 first contact missions. Amy was smart and calm under pressure, which made her perfect for diplomatic work. "Put it on the main screen," Jake replied. A tall, elegant alien appeared on the screen. The creature had pale blue skin and large silver eyes. Its voice was smooth like music when it spoke. "Welcome, humans. I am Chancellor Mordun of the Zephyrian High Council. You have permission to land at the Crystal Palace. Your ship will be guided to the proper landing area." Jake nodded politely. "Thank you, Chancellor. We look forward to meeting with your people." The connection ended, and Jake turned to his team. Besides Amy, he had brought Dr. Sam Rodriguez, who studied alien biology and cultures. There was also Commander Ryan Brooks, an engineer who understood alien technology. The fourth member was diplomat Helen Price, who spoke several alien languages. "Remember the briefing," Jake told them as their shuttle flew toward the planet. "The Zephyrians value formal behavior and respect for authority. They've been a spacefaring civilization for over 10,000 years. To them, we're probably like children." The Crystal Palace was exactly what its name suggested. The entire building looked like it was carved from one massive crystal. Towers rose high into the sky, and rainbow lights moved through the walls like water. Jake had seen many impressive alien cities, but this one took his breath away. Zephyrian. Guards met them at the landing pad. The guards were 7 feet tall and wore armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. They didn't speak but gestured for the humans to follow them. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top. Hundreds of Zephyrians stood along the walls, all watching the humans with curious silver eyes. At the far end of the room sat a throne that looked like a frozen waterfall, but the throne was empty. Instead, a young Zephyrian stood in front of it. She looked almost human except for her blue skin and silver eyes. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight itself. This had to be Princess Lyra, the heir to the Zephyrian throne. "Chancellor," Mordun stepped forward. "Princess Lyra Velthari, may I present Captain Jake Morrison of Earth representing the human species?" Jake bowed slightly, as was proper for meeting royalty. "Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you. We come in friendship, hoping to build a relationship between our peoples." The princess looked at Jake with an expression that might have been amusement. When she spoke, her voice was clear but cold. "So these are the famous humans we've heard whispers about. How small you are." Jake kept his face neutral. He had expected some condescension. Most advanced alien races looked down on humans at first. Princess Lyra walked around the human delegation like she was examining museum pieces. "Tell me, Captain Morrison, how long do your people typically live?" "About 80 to 100 years, Your Highness." The princess laughed, and several Zephyrians in the audience joined her. "How delightfully brief. We Zephyrians live for over 1,000 years. You're like mayflies to us, aren't you? Tiny creatures that flutter about for a moment and then disappear." Jake felt Amy tense beside him, but he remained calm. "We make the most of the time we have, Your Highness." "Oh, I'm sure you do," the princess said mockingly. "I've read about your species. Such an amusing history. You spent most of your existence hitting each other with sticks and rocks. Even now you can barely leave your own star system without our permission to use the hyperspace lanes." Dr. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Commander Brooks's hands were clenched into fists. Helen Price stared straight ahead, her face like stone. Princess Lyra was just getting started. Your technology is so primitive. Your fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. Your computers are less powerful than our children's toys. Your weapons couldn't scratch the paint on our mining equipment. She paused in front of Jake again. And yet here you are, asking to join the galactic community. What could you possibly offer us? What could a species of tree-dwelling animals, who discovered fire only yesterday, contribute to civilized society? The throne room was completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He had been insulted by aliens before, but never so thoroughly or publicly. The princess was making it clear that she saw humans as nothing more than clever pets. Jake looked around the room at all the watching Zephyrians. He saw amusement in some faces, curiosity in others, and a few expressions that might have been embarrassment. Then he looked back at the young princess who thought herself so superior. Slowly, Jake straightened up to his full height. He looked directly into Princess Lyra's silver eyes. For a moment, the only sound in the vast throne room was the soft humming of the crystal walls. Then Jake did something that no alien species had ever done in the presence of Zephyrian royalty. He turned around and started walking toward the exit. "I believe this meeting has concluded," he said calmly. "We wish you well." Amy, Sam, Ryan, and Helen immediately fell into step behind him. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence of the throne room. "Wait," Princess Lyra called out. "You cannot simply leave. I am the heir to the Zephyrian throne." Jake didn't stop walking. He didn't turn around. He didn't say another word. The human delegation reached their shuttle and lifted off, leaving behind a planet full of very confused aliens. The news spread through the galaxy faster than light. Within hours, every major alien civilization knew about the human captain, who had simply walked away from Princess Lyra. Most aliens couldn't believe it. No one walked away from the Zephyrians. Ever back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen sat in her office reading reports from across human space. Every human colony and space station was asking the same question. Were they about to go to war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy? "Jake, what were you thinking?" Lisa muttered to herself as she read Captain Morrison's official report. She had known Jake for 20 years. He was one of her best captains, always calm and professional. But this time, he might have doomed humanity. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Admiral, you have an urgent communication from the Karathi Federation." Lisa's eyebrows rose. The Karathi were a proud warrior race who had been fighting the Zephyrians for centuries. They had never shown any interest in talking to humans before. The alien who appeared on her screen was massive, with gray skin and 4 arms. This was Ambassador Velnoth, one of the most respected diplomats in Karathi space. "Admiral Chen," the alien said in perfect English. "I wish to discuss trade agreements between our peoples." Lisa tried to hide her surprise. "Of course, Ambassador. May I ask what prompted this sudden interest?" Velnoth's face showed what might have been a smile. "Your Captain Morrison has done something remarkable. For the first time in 1,000 years, someone showed the Zephyrians that their opinion doesn't matter. My people respect this kind of courage." After the call ended, Lisa sat back in her chair. Maybe Jake hadn't made a mistake after all. On the space station Harmony Point, 3 different alien races approached the human diplomatic office in one day. The bird-like Skyral wanted to discuss cultural exchanges. The insect-like hive mind offered to share agricultural technology. Even the mysterious wanderer clans, who rarely talked to anyone, sent a representative. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was monitoring communications from the human embassy on Galactic Central Station. What she saw amazed her. Alien species that had been ignored or bullied by the Zephyrians for centuries were suddenly talking about the human example. In the Tau sector, 3 planets that had been forced to pay tribute to the Zephyrian Empire announced they were suspending payments. Their leaders claimed they were inspired by humanity's display of dignified independence. On the mining world of Kepler-7, workers from 6 different species went on strike. They demanded better working conditions and fair wages. When the Zephyrian overseers asked why, the workers pointed to news broadcasts about Captain Morrison. "Even the humans won't bow to you," one worker said. "Why should we?" Meanwhile, on Zephyria Prime, Princess Lyra paced in her private chambers like a caged animal. She had replayed the throne room scene hundreds of times, trying to understand what had happened. "How dare he?" she said to her reflection in the crystal mirror. "I am royalty. He should have begged for my forgiveness." But deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong. Chancellor Mordun entered her chambers with a grim expression. "Your Highness, we need to talk." "If this is about the humans, I don't want to hear it," Lyra snapped. "I'm afraid you must." "Hear it," the old Chancellor replied. He activated a holographic display showing a map of Zephyrian space. Red dots appeared on dozens of worlds. "These are all the places where our authority is being challenged. Rebellions, strikes, and refusals to follow our laws. All of them started after your meeting with Captain Morrison." Lyra stared at the map. There were so many red dots. "But we have the strongest military in the galaxy. We have technology these primitives can't even imagine." "Yes," Mordun said sadly, "but military might only works when people are afraid of it. The humans weren't afraid. They didn't try to fight us or beg for mercy. They just left. And now everyone else is wondering why they should be afraid either." The princess felt something cold in her stomach. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that our empire was built on the belief that everyone else needed us more than we needed them. The humans proved that wrong. They showed the galaxy that Zephyrian approval isn't necessary for survival." In another part of the palace, the High Council was in emergency session. Elder Torveth, the oldest member of the council, spoke in his ancient voice. "In 3,000 years of galactic politics, no species has ever simply ignored us. They either submit or they fight. These humans did neither." Elder Nixara nodded agreement. "Our intelligence reports show that human colonies are expanding rapidly. They're making trade deals with species we've never even heard of. They're solving engineering problems that have puzzled our best scientists." "How is that possible?" asked Elder Quindal. "Our technology is far superior to theirs." "Their technology is different," Nixara replied. "They don't try to dominate problems. They work around them. They collaborate instead of commanding. It's unsettling." Back on his ship, Captain Morrison was reading his own reports. Every day brought news of more alien species wanting to talk to humans. His communication officer, Ensign Kevin Walsh, was working overtime just to schedule all the meetings. Dr. Sam Rodriguez knocked on Jake's door. "Captain, I've been analyzing the galactic response to our departure from Zephyria. It's fascinating, from an anthropological standpoint." "How so?" Jake asked. "Well, the Zephyrians have maintained power through a combination of superior technology and psychological dominance. They make other species believe that Zephyrian approval is necessary for success, but when you walked away, you proved that belief wrong." Jake nodded. "I didn't plan for any of this, Sam. I just couldn't sit there and let that girl insult our entire species." "That's what makes it so powerful," Sam replied. "You didn't do it for political reasons or to make a statement. You did it because it was the right thing to do. That's something the galaxy hasn't seen from a spacefaring species before." Commander Ryan Brooks joined them, carrying a data pad. "Captain, you need to see this. Our sensors picked up Zephyrian scout ships following us for the past 3 days." Jake frowned. "Are they planning to attack?" "I don't think so," Ryan said. "Their weapons aren't charged, and they're staying at a respectful distance. It's almost like they're curious." Meanwhile, Princess Lyra was doing something she had never done before, studying human history. She accessed the galactic database and began reading about Earth's past. What she found disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. Humans had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and diseases that would have wiped out most species. They had fought wars that lasted decades and made peace with former enemies. They had built beautiful art and music while also creating terrible weapons. They were contradictory and confusing and absolutely fascinating. But the thing that puzzled her most was their concept of dignity. Humans seemed to believe that some things were more important than survival or success. They would rather die than give up their self-respect. This was completely alien to Zephyrian thinking. The princess found herself wondering, when Captain Morrison walked away, was he protecting human dignity? And if so, what did that say about her own behavior? Late that night, as she looked out at the stars, Princess Lyra made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find Captain Morrison and get some answers. Princess Lyra spent every free moment studying humans. She told her tutors she was researching potential threats to the Empire, but the truth was more complicated. She was trying to understand why Captain Morrison's simple act of walking away had shaken her so deeply. The more she learned about humans, the more confused she became. These creatures were supposed to be primitive, yet they had accomplished things that impressed even her. They had built machines that could think, created art that made her feel strange emotions, and developed medicine that could cure diseases the Zephyrians had given up on centuries ago. But it was their history that truly puzzled her. Humans had survived things that should have destroyed them completely. When ice covered their world, they found ways to stay warm. When diseases killed millions, they learned to make medicine. When wars devastated their cities, they rebuilt them even better than before. They don't give up, she whispered to herself while reading about human exploration. Even when everything seems hopeless, they keep trying. Chancellor Mordun found her in the palace library at 3 a.m, surrounded by holographic displays showing human culture and history. Your Highness, you should be sleeping. Mordun, look at this, she said, pointing to a display showing human art. They create beautiful things even during their wars. Why would they waste time on beauty when they're fighting for survival? The old chancellor looked at the images of human paintings, sculptures, and music. Perhaps beauty gives them strength. That makes no sense, Lyra said. Beauty doesn't help you win battles or build ships, doesn't it? Mordun asked quietly. If you have something beautiful to fight for, perhaps that makes you stronger than someone who fights only for power. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was becoming famous throughout human space. Every news service wanted to interview the man who had walked away from the Zephyrians. Jake hated the attention, but Admiral Chen ordered him to do a few interviews to help with human diplomatic efforts. Captain Morrison, asked reporter Jane Collins during a live broadcast, did you know that your actions would cause such a massive response across the galaxy? Jake shook his head. I had no idea. I just couldn't sit there and listen to someone insult my entire species. Any decent person would have done the same thing. But most people would have been afraid of the consequences. Fear is a choice, Jake replied. I chose not to be afraid. That interview was broadcast across the galaxy and translated into hundreds of languages. On dozens of worlds, beings who had lived under Zephyrian control for generations heard a human captain say that fear was a choice. Dr. Sam Rodriguez was studying the galactic response to human diplomacy. What he found amazed him. Captain, you need to see this data. Since we left Zephyria, we've been contacted by over 200 alien species. Most of them want trade agreements or cultural exchanges. That's good news, Jake said. It's better than good, Sam replied. It's revolutionary. These species are bypassing traditional galactic politics completely. They're not asking the Zephyrians for permission to talk to us, they're just doing it. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was monitoring communications when she noticed something interesting. Captain, I'm picking up encrypted messages between Zephyrian scout ships. They're reporting our activities to their home world, but they're not trying to interfere with our diplomatic meetings. What do you think they're doing? Jake asked. I think they're trying to figure out how we're accomplishing so much without their technology or approval, Amy replied. We're making friends and allies using methods they don't understand. On the trade station Nexus Point, Commander Ryan Brooks was negotiating technology exchanges with 3 different alien species. The Karathi wanted human medical techniques. The Skyral were interested in human music and art. The Wanderers wanted to learn about human exploration methods. Your people have an interesting approach to problem solving, said Karathi engineer Thaxnor. When you encounter something you don't understand, you try to learn about it instead of destroying it or controlling it. Ryan nodded. We've learned that cooperation usually works better than competition. This is why the Zephyrians are nervous, Thaxnor said quietly. Your methods work, but they threaten everything the Zephyrians believe about power and control. Back on Zephyria Prime, the situation was getting worse. 6 more planets had stopped paying tribute. The hive mind had declared independence from the Zephyrian Empire. Even some Zephyrian colonies were demanding more self-government. Elder Torveth called another emergency council session. The situation is becoming critical. Our influence is crumbling faster than we ever thought possible. We could use military force, suggested Elder Quindel. Remind everyone why they should respect us. Military force against how many worlds? Asked Elder Nixara. We would have to fight half the galaxy. And for what? To force people to pretend they need us? Princess Lyra listened to the debate from her seat at the council table. She was the youngest member ever to attend these meetings, but her royal blood gave her the right to be there. What if we're approaching this wrong? She said suddenly. The room fell silent. It was unusual for the princess to speak during council sessions. Explain yourself, Your Highness, Elder Torveth said. What if the problem isn't that other species are rejecting us? What if the problem is that we never gave them a reason to accept us beyond fear? The council members looked at each other uncomfortably. The humans didn't walk away because they were afraid. Lyra continued. They walked away because they thought we were being rude. Maybe other species feel the same way. Your Highness, Chancellor Mordun said carefully, are you suggesting that our diplomatic methods need to change? Lyra thought about Captain Morrison's calm dignity as he faced her insults. She thought about the human history she had been studying, full of examples of people choosing principles over convenience. I'm suggesting that maybe the humans know something about respect that we don't, she said. That night, Princess Lyra made a decision that would have shocked her younger self. She disguised herself as a cultural researcher and booked passage on a merchant ship heading for neutral space. She was going to find Captain Morrison and learn the truth about human dignity. Her bodyguard, Captain Zexitai, protested the plan. Your Highness, this is too dangerous. What if the humans capture you? Then I'll learn how they treat prisoners, Lyra replied. That might be educational too. As her ship left Zephyrian space, Princess Lyra felt something she had never experienced. Before uncertainty, for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she was right about everything. On his ship, Captain Morrison was reviewing reports from human diplomatic missions across the galaxy. Every day brought news of new friendships and alliances. Humanity was becoming a major player in galactic politics, not through conquest or intimidation, but through simple decency and mutual respect. Sir, said Ensign Kevin Walsh, we're getting a request to dock at Trading Station Alpha 7. They want to discuss mining rights in the Centauri system. Set course for Alpha 7, Jake ordered. He had no way of knowing that a disguised alien princess was already waiting for him there. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a simple human principle. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It was such a basic idea that most advanced civilizations had forgotten it existed. But Princess Lyra was about to learn that sometimes the most basic ideas are the most powerful ones of all. Trading Station Alpha 7 was exactly the kind of place Princess Lyra had never visited before. The space station was old, crowded, and filled with dozens of different alien species. Merchants hawked goods in languages she didn't recognize. The air smelled like engine fuel, exotic spices, and too many different life forms in one place. Lyra wore a simple gray robe with a hood that covered her distinctive blue hair. She had practiced walking like a common researcher instead of floating gracefully like royalty. Nobody gave her a second look, which was both liberating and slightly insulting. She found the human ship New Horizon docked at Bay 7. It was smaller than she had expected and much more practical looking than the elegant vessels her people built. Everything about it suggested function over beauty, which seemed very human. The station's cantina was a dimly lit space where beings from across the galaxy could eat, drink, and conduct business. Lyra ordered something called coffee because she had read that humans considered it important. The dark liquid tasted bitter and strange, but she forced herself to drink it. Captain Morrison entered the cantina alone, which surprised her. Zephyrian officers never went anywhere without guards or attendants. Jake looked around the room, nodded politely to a few alien merchants he recognized, then sat at a small table in the corner with his own cup of coffee. Lyra watched him for several minutes. He didn't act like someone who had recently defied the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He just sat there, reading reports on a datapad and occasionally sipping his coffee. He looked ordinary. Finally, she gathered her courage and approached his table. "Excuse me, are you Captain Morrison?" Jake looked up. His eyes were brown and kind, nothing like the cold silver eyes she was used to seeing in mirrors. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" "I'm Dr. Vera Nash," Lyra said, using the false name she had prepared. "I'm a cultural researcher studying human diplomatic methods. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions." Jake gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Please sit down. Though I'm not sure how much help I'll be. I'm just a ship captain, not a diplomat." Lyra sat down carefully, trying not to move too gracefully. "Actually, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. Your recent interaction with the Zephyrians has caused quite a stir in academic circles." "Has it?" Jake asked with a slight smile. "I didn't realize walking away from a rude conversation was worth studying." "You didn't find the princess intimidating?" Jake considered the question while taking a sip of coffee. She was young and obviously very sheltered. I got the impression that nobody had ever told her no before. Lyra felt heat rise in her cheeks. "She's the heir to the throne of the most powerful empire in the galaxy." "So?" Jake shrugged. "Being born into power doesn't make someone wise or kind. In my experience, the people who demand respect the most are usually the ones who deserve it the least." The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. She had spent her entire life being told how special and important she was. The idea that her birthright might not automatically make her worthy of respect had never occurred to her. "But surely you were afraid of the consequences," she pressed. "The Zephyrians could destroy Earth." Jake's expression grew serious. "Could. They maybe. But fear is a terrible way to make decisions. If you let fear control you, you stop being yourself and become whatever your fear wants you to be. So you're never afraid?" "Of course I'm afraid sometimes," Jake replied. "But I try not to let fear make my choices for me. When that princess was insulting my people, I had two options. I could sit there and take it, hoping she might be nicer to us later, or I could maintain my dignity and walk away. I chose dignity." Lyra stared into her coffee cup. "What if maintaining your dignity meant your people would suffer for it?" "Then they would suffer with dignity," Jake said simply. "Some things are more important than comfort or safety." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cantina buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Traders made deals, travelers shared stories, and life went on in its chaotic, wonderful way. "Can I ask you something?" Lyra said finally. "Of course." "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't know anything about me." Jake smiled. "You seem like someone who's genuinely trying to understand something important. That's worth encouraging." Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. When was the last time someone had been kind to her without wanting something in return? When was the last time someone had seen her as a person instead of a title? "Tell me about your people," she said. "What makes humans different from other species?" Jake thought for a long time before answering. "I'm not sure we are different. We just remember that everyone else is trying to figure out life just like we are. Nobody has all the answers, no matter how powerful or advanced they claim to be." "Even the Zephyrians?" "Especially the Zephyrians," Jake said. "They've been powerful for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to be uncertain or vulnerable. But uncertainty and vulnerability are what make us grow." Lyra leaned forward. "How do you mean?" "When you don't know everything, you have to listen to others. When you're not the strongest, you have to find other ways to solve problems. When you're vulnerable, you learn to value kindness and cooperation." But if you're powerful enough, you don't need those things. Jake shook his head. That's what powerful people tell themselves. But power without wisdom is just destruction, waiting to happen. And you can't learn wisdom if you think you already know everything. Commander Ryan Brooks entered the cantina and spotted his captain. He approached the table with a slight frown. Captain, we need to discuss the engineering. Reports from the Karathi. Of course, Jake said, then turned to Lyra. I'm sorry, Dr. Nash, but duty calls. Lyra felt panic rise in her throat. She wasn't ready for this conversation to end. Wait, could we continue this discussion later? Jake stood up and smiled at her. I'd like that. We're here for 2 more days. Perhaps you could join me for dinner tomorrow. I'd be interested to hear more about your research. After Jake left, Lyra sat alone in the cantina for a long time. Her coffee had gone cold, but she didn't notice. She was thinking about power and wisdom and the strange human concept of treating strangers with kindness. For the first time in her life, she wondered if there might be better ways to live than the ones she had been taught. The next evening, Lyra met Jake for dinner in the cantina. She had spent hours preparing what to say, but Jake's easy conversation made all her planning unnecessary. They talked about art, philosophy, and the nature of leadership. The hardest part about being in charge, Jake said, is remembering that other people aren't there to serve you, you're there to serve them. But surely someone has to be in charge, Lyra argued. Someone has to make the hard decisions. Absolutely, Jake agreed. But there's a difference between making decisions and making demands. Good leaders explain their choices and listen to feedback. Bad leaders just expect obedience. Lyra thought about her interactions with her own people. How many times had she actually listened to their opinions? How often had she explained her reasoning instead of simply giving orders? As the evening wore on, Lyra found herself sharing thoughts and feelings she had never voiced before. Jake listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and treated her ideas with respect. It was intoxicating. Finally, she couldn't bear the deception any longer. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. I'm not really Dr. Nash. Jake nodded calmly. I know. Lyra's eyes widened. You know? You move like someone who's never had to worry about personal safety. You speak like someone who's used to being obeyed, and you ask questions like someone who's never had to see things from anyone else's perspective. Jake's voice remained gentle. Plus, your accent is distinctly upper-class Zephyrian. You knew I was lying this whole time? I suspected. But I figured you had your reasons for the disguise. Lyra stared at him in amazement. Aren't you angry? Aren't you worried I might be here to spy on you or hurt you? Jake shrugged. Are you? No, she said immediately. I needed to understand. Understand what? Lyra took a deep breath. Why you walked away from me. The silence stretched between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Princess Lyra sat across from Captain Morrison, her disguise finally dropped, waiting for his reaction to her true identity. Jake sipped his coffee and studied her face. Without the arrogance and anger she had worn in the throne room, she looked very young and very lost. You're Princess Lyra, he said finally. Yes. And you came all this way to ask me why I walked away from you, yes? Jake leaned back in his chair. The answer is simple. You were being cruel, and I don't have to listen to cruel people, no matter who they are. Lyra flinched. I was representing my people. I was showing strength. No, Jake said gently. You were showing fear. Fear? Lyra's voice rose slightly. Several aliens at nearby tables glanced over. She lowered her voice. I wasn't afraid. I'm a princess of the Zephyrian Empire. You were terrified, Jake continued. Terrified that humans might actually be worth something. Terrified that your empire's power might not be as absolute as you've been told, so you tried to make yourself feel bigger by making us feel smaller. Lyra opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Deep inside, she knew he was right. I've been studying your people, she said quietly. Your history, your culture, your philosophy. I don't understand how you do it. Do what? Survive, thrive, build beautiful things while everything falls apart around you. She looked out the cantina's window at the stars. My people have had peace and prosperity for thousands of years, but we've never created anything like human music or art. We've never shown the kind of courage your people show every day just by existing. Jake was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's because we know how fragile everything is. When you might lose something at any moment, you appreciate it more. Is that why you weren't afraid of me? Because you're used to losing things? No, Jake said. I wasn't afraid of you because I knew who I was. You can't threaten someone's identity if they're comfortable with it. They talked until the cantina closed. Lyra asked Jake about human philosophy, about concepts like dignity and self-respect that seemed so foreign to Zephyrian thinking. Jake asked her about her empire, about what it was like to grow up believing you were superior to everyone else. It's lonely, she admitted. When everyone agrees with you because they have to, you never know what anyone really thinks. When everyone serves you because they're afraid, you never know if anyone actually likes you. Is that what you want? Jake asked. To be liked? Lyra considered this. I want to be worth liking. 3 days later, Princess Lyra returned to Zephyria Prime. But she wasn't the same person who had left. She walked differently, thought differently, and most importantly, she saw her people differently. Her first act was to call a meeting with Chancellor Mordun and the High Council. I want to change our tribute system, she announced. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Elder Torveth raised his hand for silence. Your Highness, the tribute system has maintained galactic stability for millennia. No, Lyra said, firmly. It has maintained galactic fear. There's a difference. She activated a holographic display showing the current state of the Empire. Red dots marked worlds in rebellion. Yellow dots showed planets demanding more independence, and only a handful of green dots indicated full compliance. Our empire is crumbling because it was built on sand. We demanded respect instead of earning it. We took loyalty instead of inspiring it. She looked around the chamber at the shocked faces of the council members. The humans showed us a better way. The humans are a primitive species, Elder Quindel protested. The humans are our teachers, Lyra replied, and I intend to learn from them. Over the following months, Princess Lyra transformed Zephyrian foreign policy. Instead of demanding tribute, she offered fair trade agreements. Instead of appointing governors to client worlds, she allowed them to elect their own leaders. Instead of using military force to maintain order, she used diplomacy and mutual benefit. The changes were met with resistance from the Zephyrian military and old guard politicians. But they were welcomed by the species who had been under Zephyrian control for generations. Captain Morrison watched these developments from afar as he continued his diplomatic missions. Dr. Sam Rodriguez brought him regular reports about the Zephyrian transformation. It's remarkable, Captain. Princess Lyra has essentially revolutionized one of the oldest empires in the galaxy, and she's doing it using human principles of cooperation and mutual respect. How are her people taking it? Jake asked. Mixed reactions. The younger generation loves the changes. The older generation is struggling to adapt, but the results speak for themselves. Instead of rebellions, they're getting volunteers. Instead of tribute, they're getting genuine trade partners. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was coordinating with the new Zephyrian Diplomatic Corps. The difference in their approach was like night and day. Captain, she reported, Princess Lyra has requested a formal meeting to establish a cooperation treaty between humanity and the Zephyrian Federation. Jake raised an eyebrow. Federation? Apparently she's restructuring the entire empire. No, more emperor or empress. They're becoming a voluntary federation of worlds with elected representation. 6 months after their meeting on the trading station, Jake found himself back in the Crystal Palace on Zephyria Prime. But this time, the throne room had been redesigned. Instead of one massive throne overlooking everyone else, there was a circular chamber, where representatives from dozens of worlds sat as equals. Princess Lyra, who now insisted on being called President Lyra, met Jake at the entrance. "Captain Morrison," she said with a smile. "Welcome back." "Madam President," Jake replied with a slight bow. "You've been busy." "I had a good teacher," she said. "Someone taught me that true strength comes from lifting others up, not keeping them down." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Representatives from across the galaxy came to witness the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Accords. Humans, Zephyrians, Karathi, Skyrel, and dozens of other species committed to working together as equals. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's new ambassador to the Galactic Council, shook hands with President Lyra as they signed the historic agreement. "This is just the beginning," Lyra said. "I want to establish interspecies universities, joint research projects, cultural exchange programs. Imagine what we could accomplish if we worked together instead of competing." 5 years later, Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the observation deck of the first interspecies university station. Through the window, he could see ships from hundreds of different worlds bringing students eager to learn from each other. President Lyra joined him at the window. She looked older now, more seasoned by the challenges of transforming a galaxy-spanning empire into a voluntary federation. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "Giving up absolute power to become a public servant?" Lyra smiled. "Every day I wake up knowing that the people I serve chose to trust me with their future. That's worth more than any crown or throne." They stood in comfortable silence, watching young beings from across the galaxy learning to work together, to respect each other, and to build a better future. "You know what the most important lesson was?" Lyra said finally. "What's that?" "That walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the first step toward finding something better." Jake nodded. "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept that things have to stay the way they are." As they watched, a group of human and Zephyrian students worked together on a project, their different perspectives combining to create something neither species could have accomplished alone. The galaxy was changing, and at the heart of that change was a simple human truth. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their species, their power, or their past mistakes. Sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest changes. Sometimes, walking away from the wrong thing is the first step toward finding the right thing. And sometimes, the best way to show strength is to refuse to abuse the power you have. Captain Morrison had learned all of this by simply being human. Princess Lyra had learned it by choosing to become better than she was. Together they had shown the galaxy that there was always room for hope, always time for change, and always a reason to believe in the possibility of something better. The young royal who had once tried to belittle humanity now worked alongside them to build a more just and peaceful galaxy. And the human captain who had simply walked away had sparked a transformation that would echo through the stars for generations to come.